Pranams to everyone from Shantikunj, Haridwar, Dev Sanskriti Vishwavidyalaya. I would like to start with the recitation of the Gayatri Mantra. All of you are familiar with the purpose, significance, value and the preciousness of the Gayatri Mantra. There are more than 100,000 mantras in the Vedic scriptures and literature. And Gayatri is the mantra that is created with an idea that the divinity within each and every soul should be unleashed. If you look at the journey of the mankind, it seems that we are searching for a perfection. And this hunt for perfection that each and every individual human soul is carrying within themselves, it's coming with a deep instinct to discover an absolute, timeless, eternal truth, Satya, Paramatma, Parmeshwar, Ishwar, whichever way you want to call it, along with a desire to unleash our hidden but divine possibilities and potential. And Gayatri is the mantra that allows one to walk on that path that we call as the path of Sanmarga, Sadgyana, Sadbuddhi, Sadbhav, righteousness. So those of you who could chant the Gayatri Mantra, please do it with me. Feel that with each and every word of the Gayatri Mantra, the divine vibrations of the pious energy of the mantra are reaching to our soul, nourishing it, protecting it. Gayatri Mantra together. Om Bhur Bhuva Tatsaveturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhemahe Dheyo Yonah Prachodaya. Pranams to everyone. We are restarting the discussions on the Patanjali Yoga-Sutra, which is one of the most wonderful scriptures ever written in India. Probably one of those scriptures that would never lose its value. The spiritual value inside it, the spirit that it has inside it, that can never be taken away from it. There are always two kinds of scriptures, no matter where we go and whatever time zone we are in. First are those which are of practical importance. They have got an importance for a time being. They are of importance to a particular culture, geography, topography. They are of academic and scholastic importance. So you need to revise them. You need to amend them, you need to modify them, you need to embellish them. And that's why there are editions of certain books, first, second, third, fourth, 14th, 16th editions, because knowledge keeps getting updated. That's the scripture that has a temporal value inside it. But then there are scriptures which are of eternal value, timeless, absolute, precious. They are designed and fashioned as per the inner psyche, the inner architecture of the human being, what we are inside. And they would never ever lose the value. Because what they are talking about is the inner journey of the human beings that remains unaffected by the language I speak, that remains unaffected by the place I am born, that remains unaffected by the race that I belong to, or the gender, or the religion, or the faith. They are about the spiritual pursuit of the mankind. And those spiritual scriptures in India have been divided into two major categories, Sutra and Shastra. Shastras are the detailed descriptions, and Sutra are written in a more cryptic manner. They are indications, directions. They are said in a manner where it's easy to remember them, memorize them. So say for example, if you are thinking of memorizing Mahabharata, then you have to remember 100,000 verses, shlokas, which is a mammoth task, close to impossible. But it's easy to remember Patanjali Yoga-Sutra aphorisms, which are 1200 words, 195 aphorisms, divided into 4 major chapters. And there is also a trick inside it. They are said in such a manner that you can remember it, but to understand the meaning behind it, because they are only pointing towards the detailed knowledge. To understand what is said, you need guidance, you need commentary, you need a detailed description, because they are only pointing towards the outline. Precise, every single word in it can never be changed, they cannot be substituted, they are just perfect in their own approach and structure, configuration, but they can never be replaced. However, you can provide different commentaries upon it. That's why the moment Patanjali gave the Yoga-Sutra, so many great souls, enlightened beings, the illuminated souls of India, they decided to write commentary upon it. Vyasa wrote, the Vyasa Bhashya was written by Vyasa. Acharya Shankar wrote, Vachaspati Mishra wrote, Tattva Vaisharade. Vijnana Bhikshu wrote, Yoga Vartik. Nagoji Ganesh, Bhava Ganesh, Ramanand Saraswati, Hariharanand Aranya, Raja Bhoj, Martanda Vritte. So many great people have written the commentaries upon it, while the text itself is very small. 1200 words, 4 chapters, 195 aphorisms. That's it. So the idea behind it is that these sutras are said in a cryptic, mystical manner. And to understand the true meaning behind, one has to go deep inside. One has to understand each and every word, each and every sutra, each and every verse in comprehensive, holistic and total manner, without which it would be impossible to understand the continuation of what is being said. They are said in a most beautiful manner. Patanjali has never used a word without any deep and divine purpose behind it. And every single verse is a continuation of the another. If you are unable to understand this one, it would be impossible for you to understand the other one. You cannot start like a series from the middle of it. You need to start from the beginning and you cannot leave it till you have reached to the end, because every single verse is the continuation of the one that was said before. And Patanjali himself was such a remarkable being. He was in the lineage of Maharshi Angira. There are only 7 Maharshis in the Indian tradition, Sapta Rishis. Among them was the Angira. And he came from that lineage. His father was Prachin Yogi, his guru was Kauthum. And Patanjali was such a great soul that he wrote almost on every single major aspect of human personality. We have got the physical aspect. To give purification to the physical aspect, Sharir, he wrote a textbook on Ayurveda. Then comes the speech, Vani. And to give the purification to the Vani, he wrote Vyakarana. Then comes the mind. To give purification, to give perfection to the mind, he wrote Yoga-Sutra. Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vedyakena. It says that Patanjali was so great that he wrote about impurities that can happen in all possible levels. Our physical impurities could be there, impurities could be in our speech, and impurities could be in our thinking, in our mindset. And purifying all those impurities, he gave this comprehensive compendium of the beautiful scriptures that came out from India, written in all possible levels, out of which Yoga-Sutras are the most celebrated ones. Of course, the Vyakarana is also celebrated, but Yoga-Sutras are the most celebrated ones. And Yoga-Sutras were embraced by each and every divine soul that came from India after Patanjali. And Patanjali was also special because he chose a way to speak that was never used before. So his First chapter starts with Samadhipad. It's called Samadhipad because this is where he is pointing. Those who are from academic background, they know that there is something called as the outcome-based syllabus. That before you start teaching, you need to tell the student that what are you gonna get. If you study this, then what is the end point? If you are enrolling yourself into this course program, then what should you look for as the ultimate outcome of this study? And that's what he is saying, that if you are enrolling into this chapter, end point is Samadhi. Any yogic effort is meaningless if it hasn't reached to Samadhi. And that's why the first chapter is called Samadhipad. Samadhipad starts because today we are just actually talking about the first chapter, so that the second chapter that I am about to begin, they both could be bridged together, so that it becomes easier for one to understand that what was talked before and how we can continue from here on. So first chapter starts with Patanjali saying Ath Yoga Anusashanam. Let us talk about yoga as a discipline. What is yoga? Question comes. And he gives the famous definition, Yogasya Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga is the banishment, control, cessation of all vrittis of the chitta. If I am able to accomplish that, if I am able to have complete control over my vrittis, then what would I get? Tada, then, drishtuhu. I become a drishta. I am neither a doer nor a participant. I just become the witness of this grand spectacle. I am here only as an audience. My participation to it is like a flute's participation in a music. It can flow through it, but it would not give birth to a music on its own. No karma is taking place through me. I am only an instrument for it to take place. I become drishta. Tada drishtuhu swarupe avasthanam. I become a mere witness. And I become seated in my true, pure consciousness. Swarupe avasthanam. That is when I take the path of yoga. That is when I reach to the end point of yoga. That is when I accomplish Samadhi. Third verse, Tada drishtuhu swarupe avasthanam. But what happens if I am unable to do it? Vritti sarupyam itiratra. Fourth verse he says, itiratra, otherwise. Sarupya, identify. I keep myself identified as being told by the vrittis of the chitta. I am identifying to whatever the vrittis are telling me to identify. I am not in my true consciousness, but I am in a consciousness that is colored by my vrittis. It's not a pure crystal. It's a colored one. It's not a clean glass. It's a dirty one. Question comes, what are the vrittis? He talks about them. He says, vrittya panchattaya klishtah aklishtah. Vrittis are 5 in number, klisht and aklisht, and are 2 types, klisht and aklisht, helpful and harmful, supportive and detrimental. They can lead for one to be freed from all possible bondages, or they can give birth to the bondages. They are both, they are the gate. Either I can come in or I can go out. Same gate. I can use that as an entry point or I can use that as an exit. So they are doing nothing. They are just facilitating what our vrittis are taking us. Just like that. Vrittya panchattya klishtya klishtya. What are the vrittis? What are those 5 vrittis? Praman, Viparya, Vikalpa, Nidra, smriti. He says 5 vrittis are pramana. We use this word in the courts of India. Pramana means proof, correct knowledge. Viparya, false knowledge. Vikalpa, imagination. Nidra, sleep. Smritya, memory. Your mind would be in either of these 5. There is nothing beyond that. It's such a scientific way to understand that if these 5 are there, mind is there. If they are gone, we are in a true consciousness. And these vrittis, he is explaining only for the reason that if you are able to understand that we are surrounded by these 5, then we are not in our true consciousness. We are not in our swarupa. Pramana. First one he says, he defines them then. He says Pramana is again of 3 types. Pratyakshanumana gamanani pramanani. He says Pratyakshanumana agamaha pramanani. Pratyaksh means in front of the eyes, that is ultimate perception. Anuman means assumption, inference. Agam means verbal testimony. There is a fire, I see it, this is pratyaksha. Or there is a smoke coming out from the window. So I haven't seen the fire, but I assume that there is a fire inside. Or somebody comes rushing to us and says that there is a fire, and we believe. That's a verbal testimony. Neither we saw, neither we assumed, but we heard somebody saying it and we believed it. So he says our understanding of the correct knowledge could reach to either of these 3 points, just like it happens in the court. In the court, either you have somebody who is saying that I saw it happening, or you have got somebody who provides the evidence for it. Like we saw somebody going inside, we saw somebody coming inside, nobody else went inside. So it is possible that what happened inside was done by the person that we saw going in and coming out. That is an inference or verbal testimony. There was someone who we did not see inside, but he came telling that I was there and I saw this happening. We take that as proof. So he says these 3 things, they provide us the correct knowledge. But also comes the false knowledge. Mithya Gyan matadrupa pratishtham. He says Mithya Gyan is the false knowledge that comes from the incorrect perception. Incorrect perception means it happened in front of my eyes, but I interpreted it wrongly. Imagine it like this, like you know someone and you believe it, that is a good friend of you, and he is smiling at you from long distance. You think that he must be saying something good about me. But there is also a person who doesn't like you, you don't like him, and he is smiling at you from long distance. You may think that he is grinning. He is probably being satire, like skeptical, or it's more like a smile that has got some other meaning. So it is the same thing, interpretations are different. Then comes the vikalpa, imagination. Shabda Gyananupati Vastu Shunyo Vikalpa. The one that is devoid of reality is imagination. Abhav Pratyalambana Vritti, Nidra. He says sleep is the one which is devoid of any content. There is no content. And Anubhut Vishaya Sampramoshah Smritya. That those subjects, smritis, memories, when we are able to retain those experiences with sensory objects that happened before. You can only memorize something that happened before, you cannot memorize something that hasn't taken place. Then Patanjali defines about the vrittis. He first starts with the definition of yoga. What is yoga? If you are able to take the path, that is samadhi. If you are unable to take, these are the vrittis. Then comes the question, okay, fine, now we understand the vrittis. How should we control it? He says, Abhyas Vairagyabhyam Tan Nirodha. 12th verse, he starts with this. Tan, those, Nirodha, control. Those vrittis can be controlled with 2 things, Abhyas and Vairagya, that are called as the Samadhi Yoga together. Abhyas and Vairagya. These 2 things together can control the vrittis. Tatra sthito yatno bhyasa. Out of these 2, which 2? Abhyas and Vairagya. Abhyas, tatra sthito yatno bhyasa. Abhyas is done to develop stillness and stability. You do the practice so that you can become firmly rooted in it. Anything that you do regularly, anything you do every day, anything you do with persistence and perseverance, you become good at it. from the day that you started to do it. Everyone's speed may be different, but you definitely become good from the day that you started to do it. So he says, Tatra sthito yatno abhyasa. Abhyas, practice is done to develop stability, to develop stillness. Then he defines the abhyas. He says, Satu dirghakala nirantara satkara sevita dridbhume. That is done for long period of time. Dirghakal. Nirantara, without any interruption. Satkara, with great respect. Sevita, with devotion. And then it becomes firmly established. We do practice so that our body, which has become habitual of not following or following the unconscious rather, it can be trained, it can be controlled. The impact upon the vrittis, upon it, can be managed, supervised. But then mind would still run. It would still go for the sensory objects. If we would not stop making the new karma, then no matter how many times we purify the one before, we would end up actually accumulating the new ones anyways. If there is a leak from the roof, not only we need to mop the floor, but we also need to correct the leak. So Patanjali says both needs to be done together. You also need to mop the floor, you also need to do the practice, but you also need to correct the leak so that new karma are not created. How would you do that? Vairagya. He says Vairagya, which is two types. Drashtanushavika vishaya vitrishnasya vashikara sangya vairagyam. First Vairagya is vashikara sangya, which means drishta anushravika vishaya. All those sensory objects which were either seen, drishta, anushravik, heard, developing a sense or a state of no craving for them. I have got no craving for everything that neither saw, heard or whatever. I have got no desire. And it's a very beautiful verse, because if I develop an attachment for the things that I have seen, it's a different thing. But people are still attached to the things that they have never seen. They may be attached to a celebrity that they have never seen. They may be attached to a place that they have never seen. They may be attached to a car that they never had. They may be attached to a house that was never built. It's all in imagination, but they may still be attached to it. He says, anything that I heard or seen, I develop no craving for it. It is Vashikar Sangya Vairagya. But there is even a higher one. Tat Param Purusha Khyate Guna Vaitishtam. Then comes the even higher one, the one that develops a renunciation, a dispassion, a no craving, a Vairagya for the gunas of the Prakriti. Not even them can detach me from my path. Not even them can distract me. Not even them can disrupt me. Not even them can shake me. Not even them can perturb me from my path. So from 12th to 17th verse of the first chapter Samadhipad, Patanjali says Abhyas and Vairagya. What if I am able to get it? Then he talks about the three verses in which two types of samadhis he is defining. First is Sampragyat. Vitarka, Vichar, Ananda, Asmita, Anugapat, Sampragyata. Then comes the Sampragyat Samadhi, in which Vitark, questions are gone. Vichar, thoughts are gone, mind is gone. Ananda, emotions, sentiments, impulses, urges, calm down. Asmita, the concept of I-ness, all became silent like a sea. Nothing is happening. Sampragyat. Then comes the Asampragyat, the higher one. In Sampragyat, there is a light. The word comes from Sam means like, equal. Pragya means the blissful light, and that is coming. That is there. Mind is not shaken, but still sanskars are there. The sanskars that we created before, they need to be purified. So he says, Viram Pratyaha Abhyas Purva Sanskar Sheshonya And another verse which is bhav pratyah videha prakriti layanam, that in the next stage you can reach from 2 points. Either you can reach by abhyas purva, that you can reach by doing the practice again and again, which is what he is talking about, abhyas vairagya abhyam tan nirodha, 12th verse, or you can come straight away in. There are people, although very rare, who have reached to this level by practicing, by vairagya, and then they had to leave this body, mortal form. Then they were born again. And when they are born again, they don't have to repeat the entire semester, they come only to give the examination. Bhav pratyaya videha prakriti layanam, they are called videha prakriti laya. They come here, and there is a beautiful verse comes elsewhere in the scriptures for them, that they come and their arrival to this planet is like the footsteps of the birds in the sky. There are no footsteps of the birds in the sky. So they come and they leave. They come so silently and they come without making any noise. Bhav pratyaya videha prakriti layanam. Question comes, is that's the only way? Is abhyas and vairagya only way? He says no, there are other ways also. Shraddha, virya, smriti, samadhi, pragya, purvak, itaresham. He says other people can also reach there by shraddha, faith, virya, absolute determination, smriti, by remembering who they were. When the Gita finishes, then Arjuna says, smritir labdha mohanashto, I am able to remember what I truly am. So if I am able to remember what I am, aham brahmasmi, if I am able to remember, remembering does not mean memorizing and mugging up the information, but if I am able to feel in tune with that knowledge, that I am the divine consciousness, then that's it, then also I reach. Tivra samveganam asanna. He says it depends upon the intensity of how you approach, like any other path of the life. Some people are working like the same job, but other people get the result because there is nothing, but this is the only thing they are trying to do. The intensity of our approach, the intensity of my effort would determine. Tivra samveganam asanna. He says those people reach the first who are trying hardest. Mridu, madhya, adhimatra, tvat, tatopi vishesha. In them also there is a distinction of mridu, madhya and adhimatra. Small, medium and fast, like in any dimension of the life. Some people are running non-stop, some people are running like Forrest Gump, like I would not stop till I have reached to the point. And some people are going slow. There are rabbits and there are like tortoises, but they both reach to the destination as long as the direction is right. So he says direction is right, then it depends upon the determination, it depends upon the effort. They will reach, if not today then tomorrow, but the direction should be right. Then he says a beautiful verse, he says Ishwar Pradhanadva. Those people also get it who have got utmost devotion for Ishwar. Then comes the question, who is Ishwar? He hasn't talked about it before. So then he gives the definition of the Ishwar in next 5 verses. He says, Klesha, Karma, Vipak, Ashay, Aparamrishtah, Purush Vishesha, Ishwara. That Ishwar has got 3 qualities. One, he is never aparamrishtah, he was never touched, and also would never be touched by karma. Karma is a quality of the Prakriti. Those who are engulfed into the Prakriti, they do the karma. Klesh is responsible for karma, that we would talk about the 2nd chapter. Karma brings the result, and that result is called vipak. And where this information is stored, that is called ashay. So anyone who has done the karma has got these 4 things. He says aparamrishta. Ishwar is that special kind of purush, that special soul which was never ever touched by any approach of the Prakriti. No karma ever. Why did he have to say Purush Vishesha? Because there are people who are liberated. Like Bhagwan Buddha, Lord Buddha is there, Pujya Gurudev is there. There are people who are great souls who got themselves liberated by taking this path. But Ishwar is the one who was never born, would never be born. He was never touched. Tatra niratishayam sarvagya bijam. He says in him, the knowledge reaches to the ultimate pinnacle. There is nothing beyond it. Purve shamapi guruhu kale nana vachchedat. And he was before the time. He was before anything was ever born. It's not like that he is like sun. Even sun had a birth. Even everything had a big bang and there was a genesis. There was a point where it started. He says there was no start and no end of Ishwar. He is everything and he is nothing. Tasya vachaka pranava. And he could be denoted by pranava. Om. Tajjabas tadartha bhavanam. So one way to reach to him, he says, is by doing its recitation, japa, tadartha bhavanam, and focusing upon its meaning and the message that it is carrying. I am a student, so I am asking that, okay, fine, I am doing it. What would I get in result? So he says, tatah pratyaka chetana adhigama api antaraya bhavasya. If you do that, pratyaka chetana, true consciousness, adhigama, you get the realization of the inner consciousness, and now he introduces a new word. Api means also. Antaraya abhavasya. And you also develop an absence of the antaraya. Antaraya means interruptions. What are the interruptions in the path of yoga sadhana? These interruptions are the ones which create obstacles, which create problems in the path of a yogi. What are those? Vyadhi, Isthana, Sanchaya. Vyadhi means disease. If I develop a disease, then of course my regularity of the practice would be disturbed. Isthana means having a no desire to do any practice, no interest. Sanshaya means doubt. I doubt whether I am doing it, whether I will get any result. Pramada alasya varati. Pramad means mental laziness, alasya means physical laziness, and avirati means attachment. Bhranti darshan means confusion. Alabdha bhumika tattva means inability to concentrate. Anavasthitattvani chitta vikshepah te antaraya. He says these are the ones. Anavasthitattvani means instability. So he names all of them. The problems could be ranging from an illness to laziness, from a mental difficulty to a physical difficulty to concentrate. And these are, he says, and they are not the only ones which got the problem, but they also have got sidekicks. That he calls as the vikshep sahabhuva. That comes in the next verse. Dukh dormanas sangamejet to shwash prashwas vikshep sahabhuva. Dukh, whenever they come with suffering. Dormanasya, anguish. Angamejat, shaking of the body. And shwash prashwas, inability to concentrate, control the inhalation and exhalation. If somebody is in a moment of rage and anguish, first thing that goes is the control upon the breathing. Person starts to feel so anxious, in a state of anguish, in a state of disharmony. So he says, Dukh dvarmanasya angamejayatva shwash prashwas vikshepah sabhava. How to control it? Tatah pratishedhartham ekatattva bhyasa. They can be negated, they can be controlled by focusing on one element. Which element? Now comes the question, which element? There are so many elements. So then he talks about 7 different parikarma, preparatory practices, one in each verse, by doing which or by focusing on one of those elements, one can reach to a state of no interruptions within. What are those? Comes the famous verse, Maitri Karuna Mudita Upekshanam Sukh Dukh Punya Punya Vishyanam Bhavanas Chitta Prasadanam. That by developing a feeling of respect for those who are in their phase of punya, by developing a state of friendship for those who have got the light but some amount of darkness, by developing a feeling of compassion for those who are in a state of darkness but there is a possibility to light, and by developing ambivalence for those who are in a complete state of darkness. That's one way to do it, and it is called Chitta Prasadan. Then he says, Prachardhan Vidharanabhyava Pranasya. Pranayam is another way to do it. And Vishayavati va pravritti utpanna manasah sthiti nibandhini. There is also another way to do it, which is by focusing on one sense only. Just like Tratak. If you follow the practice of the yoga, you know that only focusing on one element, only focusing on the light, on the flame, on the center point of the flame, that is also one way to develop absolute concentration. Then he said, Vishokava Jyotishmate. Another way to do it is to reach a painless, luminous state of the mind. Or Vitarag Vishyamva Chittam, or by focusing upon, or concentrating upon, or contemplating upon the lives of those who reach to the absolute pinnacle, great souls, enlightened beings, Vitarag. And Swapna Nidra Gyan Alambanam va, also focusing upon the knowledge that was ever given to us in a divine dream. And then comes a very beautiful verse. Yatha Bhimat Dhyanadva. Or by focusing anything that your inner conscience is approving of, but do it. Do not run away from it. Do it. Yatha Bhimat Dhyanadva. I am able to do all that. I did Abhyas, I did Vairagya, I did Parikarma. I got rid of the Antaraya, interruptions. What would I develop? He says, Parmanu Param Mahatva Antosya Vashikara. That person develops an absolute control, Vashikar, absolute control upon Parmanu, the smallest of the atom, to Param Mahatva, infinite magnitude. From the smallest to the biggest, person develops an absolute and complete control. And this person, he becomes, he says, like of pure crystal. Because everything that was dirty has now been purified. Kshina vritte, vrittis have become kshina. They haven't gone, but they have become feeble, very small, negligible. Abhijatasya meva mane. And this person becomes like purest crystal, beautiful, elite, pristine crystal. Tatasthat anjanata samapatte, and have reached to a state of samapatte. He has reached to a state of such kind of sampragyat samadhi where vrittis have become small. It is the first stage. Then comes what? He says, Tatra Shabd Arth Gyan Vikalpe Sankirna Savitarka Samapatte. But still there are two stages, Savitarka and Nivitarka Samadhi. It's again divided into two. Savitarka means when my mind has become still, clarity of the mind is almost reached. But if a word is said, there would be something giving birth inside me. Because of the long lasting memories of umpteen number of lives. So if somebody says cow, my mind would immediately create a picture. It's not a distraction, but it is a long lasting habit. Smriti Parishuddha, it comes because memory is there. So he says, then we still need to purify. I have deleted the folder from my computer and laptop, but I still need to delete from the recycle bin, then only it would go. He says, delete the recycle bin. Smriti Parishuddha. Swarupa Shunya. evarth matra nirbhasa nirvitarka, then reaches the nirvitarka samadhi. Etayev savichara nirvichara cha sukshma vishya vyakhyata. In the same manner, you can also define the savichar and nirvichar samadhi. Sukshma vishyatvam alinga parivasanam, and this can continue as long as the prakriti is there. The minutest element of the prakriti alinga, you can take this information up to there. Taev sabija samadhi. As long as we are in the perimeter of the prakriti, maximum we can reach is the sabija samadhi. Seed is still there, everything else has been burned, but there is a possibility of the seed to give birth to a tree. That also needs to be cut, which is the last stage. Nirvichara Vaisha Radyaha Adhyatma Prasadah. He says, then comes the true bliss of the spiritual adventure. That is the real Prasadah. Rest everything is not so important. This is the only thing that is worth having. Nirvichara. And what is the Prasad? What is the gift? What is the divine upahar that we are getting? Ratambhara Tatra Pragya. That you develop a doubtless knowledge. A knowledge that cannot come from within the Prakriti. It is beyond. It comes from the unknown realms of the consciousness. That's why he says that Shrutanumana Pragyabhyam Anya Vishya Vishesharthatvat. What it would give birth to, no one can predict. Because it is something that can never be taught in the scriptures. It would be very unique, exceptional, and no one knows where it would lead to. Because it comes from the unknown, uncharted territory of the human consciousness. Beyond Prakriti. Beyond the last known frontier of the human consciousness. It transcends it. And that's where it comes from. That's why he says, Tajjah sanskaro pratibandho anya sanskara pratibandhe. Then it gives birth to a type of life sanskar which stops any other sanskar to grow. Once you become Buddha, you have reached to Buddhatva. It answers that question that once you have become Gurudev and you have reached to the ultimate enlightenment, then what is your purpose to be here? What kind of karma you are doing from there on? The karma that you are doing there on is the one that is coming from Pragya, and that stops any other karma to take place. You are only here to do one karma that came from beyond. Now, that is the last thread. Even if you stop that, even if you go beyond it, then you reach the Nirvijaha Samadhi, which is the last verse. He says, Tatra Nirodha, Sarva Nirodha, Nirbijaha Samadhi. Then you accomplish the last known frontier of any yogic journey, which is the Nirbijaha Samadhi. Samadhi path starts by giving a direction, an indication towards Samadhi. And now we will start how, what kind of practices one needs to do to reach there. That's why the other chapter, the second chapter that we are starting is called Sadhanapad. Way to do it, tools to do it, instruments to do it. So we will do that in the discussions just after this one. Thank you for patiently listening. I end by doing the Shanti Path, the mantra for universal peace. Om Dyo Shantirantahariksha Shantehe Prithavehe Shantirapah Shantiroshadhayah Shantehe Vanaspatayah Shantirvishwe देवः शान्तिर्ब्रह्म शान्तिः सर्वगं शान्तिः शान्तिरेव शान्तिः सामा शान्तिरेधिः ॐ शान्तिः 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 सर्वारिष्ट सुशान्तिर्भवतु।
हमारे YouTube चैनल शांतिकुंज वीडियो गायत्री परिवार को सब्सक्राइब करें एवं बेल आइकन जरूर दबाएं ताकि गायत्री परिवार की विभिन्न गतिविधियों की जानकारी आपको मिलती रहे।